My name is Lucy Swift, 24 years old. At the closure dinner my brother organized after Grandma's funeral, he raised his glass, smirked at me in front of the whole family, and said, "Don't leave your wallet near her, everyone. We all know what Lucy does when nobody's looking. Some people are just born thieves." My mother laughed. My father nodded. My aunt looked away. 11 years earlier, when I was 13, my brother had said almost the exact same words. That afternoon, they believed him instantly. No questions, no proof. They took my phone, locked my bedroom from the outside, and my mother told me with cold eyes, "A liar and a thief. That's all you'll ever be to this family." I never cried in front of them, not once. But what none of them knew was that Grandma had been watching everything, and the locked box she left me, the one my brother was so desperate for me to sign away tonight, was finally ready to speak. What happened when I opened it in front of them is the reason this story will stay with you long after you hear it. Welcome back to Revenger Episodes, where we tell quiet, true-to-life family stories about boundaries, dignity, and the moment someone finally stopped shrinking. If you've ever been called a thief by your own blood, this one is for you. Drop a comment below and be sure to subscribe. To understand the dinner you just heard about, you have to understand the table. And to understand the table, you have to understand who was missing from it that night. The table sat in the dining room of our family cabin in Black Mountain, 20 minutes east of Asheville on I-40. My grandfather had built that cabin in 1972 with his own hands. Cedar siding, a tin roof gone soft gray, 3 bedrooms, and a sewing room on the second floor that looked west into the Blue Ridge. My grandparents lived there until my grandfather died in the fall of 2014. After that, my grandmother, Eileen Swift, 75 years old at the time, moved down to the main house with my parents, my brother, and me. The cabin became the family gathering place. Every Sunday, every holiday, every milestone someone in our family wanted to mark in front of witnesses. I was the last grandchild born into that family. My father, Greg Swift, was a small construction contractor. He sold the company in 2022 and retired comfortably. My mother, Maureen, was a bookkeeper for the same Catholic school for 30 years. My brother, Spencer, was 6 years older than me. He was the family's investment. I was the family's surprise, my mother's exact words, said in front of a neighbor when I was 7 and I happened to be standing in the kitchen doorway. I never forgot the phrasing. People don't when it's said about them. On the bookshelf in our living room, there were 3 framed photographs of Spencer: high school football, prom night, and his move-in day at NC State. There was 1 framed photograph of me from 4th grade. When my grandmother moved in with us in September of 2014, she brought 1 large cedar storage chest and a quiet way of watching the room. She sat with me on the porch swing the first Saturday after she arrived. The swing was painted navy blue, and the paint had faded the way porch paint always fades. I was 12. I was reading Wendell Berry to her because she liked the way I sounded out the long words. After a while, she put her hand on my knee. "Sweetheart," she said, "in every family there is one person who keeps the receipts. Most of the time, nobody wants the job. Sometimes life picks for you." I didn't understand. I offered to read another poem. She let me. 6 months later, she would understand exactly what that sentence meant. A year later, she would start keeping them for me. In the spring of 2015, my brother started calling home less from college. My mother said he was busy with school. My father said he was finally focused. My grandmother said nothing, but she watched the calendar. I didn't pay attention. I was 12, then 13, and I was preparing for a state-level scholarship competition in May. My birthday is in early February. I had turned 13 earlier that year, but the afternoon that changed everything came in July. On the 11th of July, a Saturday, my brother walked in the front door. He was supposed to be home for summer but had been keeping his distance, working jobs near Raleigh, according to our father. By then, a credit card statement had already arrived in the mail. My father opened it at the kitchen counter. I watched his face go white from the hallway. "Greg," my mother said. "What is it?" $3,000 I never charged. I didn't go into the kitchen. I went out the back, walked down to my friend Madison Hartley's house at the end of the cul-de-sac, and we went bowling that afternoon with her older sister. When I came back at 3:15, the kitchen was already a courtroom. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother sat to his left. Spencer stood with his back against the refrigerator, arms folded, calm. I would not know until much later what my brother had said in the 2 hours I was gone. But I would know it in pieces by sundown. He had said, "Mom, Dad, I didn't want to say this, but I think Lucy took your card when she went to the mall with Madison." That's how it began. I came into the kitchen through the back door, still wearing the navy polka dot shirt my mother had sewn for my birthday. The light came through the strip curtains in straight bars across the wooden floor. I remember those bars exactly. I have remembered them every July afternoon for 11 years. "Lucy, sit down," my father said. "What's wrong?" I said. My mother pushed a folded sheet of paper across the table. "Did you take your father's credit card?" I have replayed the next 20 minutes more times than I have replayed any other 20 minutes of my life. I have replayed them in dorm rooms, in office bathrooms, in cars on the side of the road. I have replayed them so many times that I can give you the order without thinking. First, Spencer told his version. He spoke slowly, the way a person speaks when he is trying to sound reluctant. He said he had seen me slide the card out of our father's wallet sometime in June, before I went to the mall with Madison. He said he had not wanted to bring it up because I was still little, and he had hoped I would put it back. He went down the statement line by line. Liberty Bicycles, June 12th, $599. Best Buy, May 28th, $329. Beats Solo 2 wireless headphones. Shell gas station on Hendersonville Road, multiple charges. A restaurant in Raleigh. A sneaker store online. He had not bought any of those things, he said. He had not been at any of those locations. He sighed. "Mom," he said, "I tried to tell you. Some people are just born this way. I didn't want to believe it about my own sister. But I saw her." My mother nodded at that line. She nodded the way you nod when someone says something you have been waiting to hear. I said, "Mom, I didn't even know what a credit card looked like." My voice did not shake. I have wondered about that for 11 years, and I have decided this is what I think. At 13, you do not know yet that you are supposed to defend yourself. You assume the truth will defend itself, because the adults in the room are adults. She said, "Then how do you explain $3,000? I had no explanation. I had not done it. People who have not done a thing are usually the worst at explaining how it was done. That was when my mother stood up. She came around the table. She put her hand on my shoulder, not to comfort me, to hold me in the chair. Her hand was warmer than I had expected. That detail has bothered me for a long time. She leaned down. "A liar and a thief," she said. Her voice was even. It was not the voice of a woman in the middle of a fight. It was the voice of a woman delivering a sentence she had already written. "That's all you'll ever be to this family, Lucy." I counted 4 blinks. She blinked 4 times saying that. People in the heat of a moment do not blink that evenly. The kitchen was quiet for what I now know was probably 5 seconds. It felt longer. Then I heard my grandmother on the stairs. She came in with a small tray of folded napkins, because that was what she had gone upstairs for. She paused in the doorway when she saw the configuration of the room. She set the tray down on a chair. She looked at Spencer first. Spencer would not meet her eyes. She looked at my father. My father looked down at the statement. That child did not do this, my grandmother said. Her voice was not loud, and every adult in this kitchen knows it. My father said, Mom, stay out of this. My mother said, Eileen, please. We are handling our family. My grandmother said, You are not handling. You are choosing. She turned. She walked back to the stairs. She climbed them, and I remember listening to the rhythm of her footsteps because she usually stepped lightly over the 9th tread, which had a small crack in the riser. That afternoon she stepped on it without softening her weight. I heard the crack click. She did not raise her voice in that house again for the next 11 years. But that night she opened the cedar chest in her sewing room, and she took out a small black notebook with a worn leather spine. I did not know about the notebook. I would not know for another 11 years. By sundown, 3 things had been taken from me. My phone, a flip-style Motorola Razr my parents had given me at 12, because they did not trust me yet with a smartphone, and now never would. My bedroom. My father moved my mattress and my dresser into the small guest room on the ground floor near the laundry. The guest room had no closet, only a metal rack on wheels. The ceiling had 17 visible cracks. I counted them that first night. And the lock. My father drove to True Value Hardware on Tunnel Road and bought a padlock and a hasp, and he installed them on the outside of my old bedroom door. The padlock was not to keep me inside. It was to keep me out of where I used to live. Around 8 in the evening, as I was passing through the hallway with a glass of water, my brother said to my mother, loudly enough for me to hear, "Don't leave your wallet near her, Mom. Some people are just born thieves." My mother did not correct him. She did not say it was inappropriate. She did not say it was a child. She did not say my name. The catchphrase entered our family that night. He used it for the next 11 years. I went to my new room. I sat on the bed. I counted the cracks. I did not cry. Not because I did not want to. I wanted to very much. I did not cry because, at 13, I had already understood that crying would be evidence for their side. Around 11:20 at night, I heard my grandmother on the carpet outside my door. She knocked once, very softly. She set something down on the carpet. She walked away. In the morning, I opened the door. The bedside lamp my grandmother had given me for my 12th birthday, the one my father had taken from my old room and put in the hall closet, was sitting on the carpet, facing into the room. She had returned to me that night, the one thing she had been able to return, not by raising her voice, by a quiet act in a dark hallway. It was the first lesson Grandma ever taught me about how to survive in that house. Keep what you can, and wait. The catchphrase did not stay in the kitchen. By Thanksgiving of 2015, my brother had folded it into the holiday, used in front of visiting relatives, used at school pickup when one of his friends came by, used in front of the neighbor who drove my mother to her hair appointment. Every audience taught him it landed. By my father's birthday in 2016, Spencer was using the line as toast material. By 2018, when my father's old business partner Wesley Carlisle came over for dinner and left his wallet on the kitchen counter, Spencer said, "Wes, careful. Old family rule about my sister." Wes laughed politely. My mother laughed too. She said, "Lucy's better now. We made sure she learned." Wes said, "Right. Right." I was 16. Each repetition was a small photocopy of the original sentence, the one my mother had said in our kitchen on the 11th of July. By the second year, the photocopy was thinner. By the 5th, it was nearly transparent. But it was always the same sentence underneath. I learned to disappear from holidays. I always had a shift. Always a class project. Always a friend's birthday I had committed to months in advance. My mother stopped asking twice. I think she preferred it. I was easier to refer to than to look at. Inside myself, something began that nobody noticed. At 17, I started a spreadsheet. I called the file Ledger. I logged every dollar I earned at my part-time job at a small CPA firm in downtown Asheville. I logged every dollar my parents did not give me for college. I logged the federal loan amounts. I logged the work-study hours. The ledger had a second sheet named Apologies, Pending. There was one row on that sheet. Mom, date received. The cell was blank. I went to UNC Asheville in August of 2020. 6 minutes from my parents' house and 1,000 miles from their kitchen. I moved into a tiny studio in West Asheville with 2 folding chairs and a futon. I studied accounting and, briefly, pre-law. I dropped the pre-law track in my second year because I did not want to be a person who fought through the legal system. I wanted to be a person who simply documented. The ledger grew. The apologies, pending sheet, stayed empty. Once, in my freshman year, a small box appeared at the door of my building. No return address. Inside was a hardback property law casebook, brand new, and a Wendell Berry collection. No note. I assumed it was from a professor or a stranger who had read one of my essays online. I kept the books. I never figured out who sent them. I would not understand until much later. Every Sunday I was not working, I went up to the cabin. Not into the main house. I parked at the side road, walked up the outdoor staircase to the second floor, and knocked on the sewing room door. My grandmother always kept it ajar. We drank Earl Grey at 4. I read Mary Oliver to her, and Wendell Berry. She never spoke about 2015 directly. She said small things instead. When I was 20, she put her hand on my hand. She said, "Receipts don't lie, sweetheart. Remember that." I thought she meant paper. When I was 21, she said, "When I am gone, look in the bottom of the cedar chest. Not before, after." I thought she meant photographs. When I was 22, she said, "Your mother was very tired, Lucy. That doesn't excuse her. But I want you to know, I never lied for her. Not in this house." I thought that was the most direct thing she would ever say. I was wrong. She would be even more direct later. I just would not hear her say it until after she was gone. In the spring of 2024, I graduated from UNC Asheville with my accounting degree. I took a position at a regional wealth management firm on Patton Avenue, estate and trust analyst, entry level, $58,000 a year. The job is exactly what it sounds like. I read other people's wills, trusts, statements, and bank records. I check for inconsistencies. I check for forged signatures. I check for transactions that don't belong where someone put them. For 4 years, I had been reading my own life as practice for that work. I just had not known it yet. On the 6th of February, 2026, I was at my desk reviewing an irrevocable trust amendment for a client when my phone buzzed. My Aunt Coraline. I knew before I answered. She said, "Sweetheart, she went this morning, in her sleep." I said, "Was she alone?" She said, "She had her notebook on her chest and a key on a chain around her neck." I closed my laptop. I drove 20 minutes up the mountain. I went straight to the sewing room. The cedar box was still under the bed. My mother was standing in the doorway of the sewing room when I turned around. It was the first time in 11 years she had stood in the same room as me and spoken to me directly. She said, "Lucy, there's something Grandma wanted you to have." It was the softest sentence she had said to me in a decade. It would also be the last she would say until the dinner in May. The funeral was held on Wednesday, the 11th of February, at St. Lawrence Basilica in downtown Asheville. My grandmother had belonged to that parish for 60 years. More than 80 people came. I sat in the 4th row from the front with my friend Bailey Pemberton. I did not sit with my family. My mother glanced over twice but did not say anything. My father did not look back at all. Spencer delivered the eulogy. I had not been asked. He stood at the lectern in a tailored navy suit, hand on the wood the way people hold a wheel they are pretending not to be in love with. He spoke for 10 minutes about Grandma's strength of family. He did not say my name once. He said, "Grandma believed in family above everything." I whispered to Bailey, "She believed in truth above everything." That's not the same word. In the inside pocket of my coat, I had a folded sheet of paper. It was the piece I had written for the funeral in case anyone asked me to speak. Nobody asked. When the service ended, I folded the paper once more and slipped it between the cushion and the pew rail. The cleaning staff would find it. After the service, my Aunt Coraline pulled gently on my sleeve. "Will reading is next Tuesday," she said. "Catherine Sutton's office, Patton Avenue." Grandma was very specific about who was supposed to be in the room. Catherine Sutton had been my grandmother's lawyer for 25 years. Her office was 3 blocks from mine. I went there on Tuesday, the 24th of February, at 10 in the morning, with Bailey beside me. Catherine allowed Bailey to wait in the conference area. She had no standing to be in the reading itself, but she had a seat with a view of the door, and that was what mattered. In the room, my father, my mother, my brother, his wife Bryn, my Aunt Coraline, and me. Catherine read the will calmly. Her voice was the kind of voice you trust to deliver bad news, which it often did, even when the news itself was not bad. The cabin and the surrounding 2 acres would be split 50-50 between Greg and Coraline. $40,000 to Spencer, designated to support his young family. $40,000 to me, undesignated. And then, separately, a cedar box and a small brass key. The note attached, in my grandmother's handwriting, read, "She'll know why." I had been wearing the key for 3 years. My grandmother had pressed it into my hand at Christmas in 2023 and said, "In case I forget." I had thought it was a charm. I had thought it was a small kindness. Catherine looked up. "Eileen specified," she said, "that this box is opened in privacy. Only Lucy may open it. That was the explicit condition of the bequest." My brother smiled. He smiled the way an attorney smiles when he sees an unsigned clause. "Privacy," he said. "That's interesting." Spencer stood up before Catherine had finished her paperwork. "Lucy," he said. "Hallway. 5 minutes." In the hallway he gathered all of us, my father, my mother, me, into a corner away from the conference area where Bailey could not hear. My Aunt Coraline stood about 4 feet away. She did not join. She did not interrupt. She held her purse in front of her stomach with both hands. Spencer's voice was reasonable. He had practiced. He said, "Lucy, we all know what you did in 15. Grandma wasn't thinking clearly those last months. Be reasonable. Sign your $40,000 over to Mom and Dad. For the funeral costs, for the family upkeep. Then we can move on. As a family." My mother said, "Lucy, it would mean a lot to your father." My father did not look up. Spencer pulled a sheet of paper out of his inside coat pocket. It said, "Family Agreement" at the top. There was a paragraph in 12-point Times New Roman about goodwill and reconciliation. There was a signature line at the bottom with my name printed under it, in Spencer's handwriting. I said, "I need time. After Easter." Spencer said, 2 weeks. I said, "After Easter. The cabin. Sunday, May the 3rd. He smiled. "Closure dinner," he said. "Perfect." Bailey drove me home. The cedar box sat on the passenger seat between us. She offered to stop at Trader Joe's for Earl Grey because she knew it had been Grandma's tea. I let her. I did not say much on the way home. She did not push. Back at my apartment, I set the cedar box on my small dining table. I did not open it. I sat with it for 3 hours. I made tea. I poured a cup for myself and a cup I set across the table. Out of habit, not for any ceremony. Bailey called at 8. "You okay?" she said. I don't know what's in there, I said. But I know Spencer is afraid of it. At 8:30, I sat down at the table. I lifted the key off the chain around my neck. I set it on the lid. I counted to 10 in my head. I had waited 11 years. 10 seconds was nothing. I turned the key. The lock was a small brass mechanism. It opened on the first turn. The first layer was a black leather notebook. The spine was worn smooth on the bottom from years of being pulled in and out of a drawer. I opened it. The first entry was dated July 11th, 2015. 3 days after the afternoon in the kitchen, it read, "Today my son made a decision I cannot fix. My granddaughter is 13. They have called her a liar and a thief. I heard my daughter-in-law say it twice. I will keep what they refuse to look at." E. On the second page, folded once and pressed flat between the pages, was a thermal paper receipt from Liberty Bicycles, June 12th, 2015. Trek FX3 Hybrid Bicycle, $599. The carbon copy beneath bore a signature on the customer line, Spencer Swift. Wide loops. The same loops he had used on birthday cards for the last decade. I turned the page. The third entry was dated July 19th, 2015. It read, "Best Buy bag found in his car this afternoon. Beats Solo 2 wireless headphones, white. Same model on the May statement. He wore them to the cookout last week." E. A second receipt was tucked into the page. I turned the next page. And the next. There were 71 used pages in the notebook. Each one had an entry. Most had a corresponding receipt or scrap of paper. She had been collecting evidence for 11 years. Under the notebook were 3 credit card statements, April, May, and June of 2015. They were not originals. They were photocopies, slightly faded, made on the cheap fax copier my father had kept in his home office before he sold the business. My grandmother had highlighted lines in yellow. She had annotated the margins in blue ballpoint pen. Best Buy, May 28th. $329. Beats Solo 2 wireless. Spencer wears them at the July 4th cookout. Photo album, page 4. Shell, Hendersonville Road. Every Friday afternoon. He drives to Raleigh for the weekends he tells us are at school. Maureen has not read these statements. Greg paid the balance silently. I retrieved these from the trash bin behind the garage on a Friday morning while everyone was at the grocery store. I set down the statements. I stood up. I walked over to the bookshelf in my apartment where I kept a single inherited photo album from my grandmother's house. I opened it to page 4. There was Spencer, July 4th, 2015, sitting on the porch swing in a red t-shirt, headphones around his neck. Beats Solo 2 wireless, white. The same model in the May statement. I sat back down. Underneath the statements was a velvet divider. I lifted it. Below the divider was a stack of bank statements. They were from First Citizens Bank in Asheville. The account was a custodial account, a UTM-A, opened in November of 2015 in the name of Lucy Swift, with Eileen Swift as custodian. The opening deposit was $200. Every month after that, my grandmother had deposited $200 on the 11th. The 11th of every month, the same day she had started the notebook. Over 9 years and 4 months, she had deposited $24,800. Periodically, she had withdrawn small amounts, 100 here, 200 there. The line items on the statements were small, but I recognized one in the spring of 2020, $312, the same amount as a hardback property law casebook plus a Wendell Berry collection. The brown box that had arrived without a return address at my freshman dorm. She had been the one. I sat there for a long time. The balance at the end of January 2026, the last full statement before her death, was $21,600 and change. Compounded interest in a money market savings account at 2.5%. Slow, steady, honest. At the front of the statement stack was a sticky note in her handwriting. For Lucy. Because they took her piggy bank in 2015 for restitution. I will replace it slowly. She will not know until she needs to. I remembered the piggy bank. It had held about $60. My mother had taken it from my new room 3 days after the kitchen to apply to your father's loss. I had not seen it since. Below the bank statements was a craft envelope. The handwriting on the outside read, "For Lucy. To be opened only after the will is read." I opened it. The letter was 2 pages in my grandmother's neat, slightly slanted script. The date at the top was September of 2023. My dear Lucy, if you are reading this, I am gone, and I am sorry I could not fix this in my lifetime. I tried in 2015. Your father chose his son. Your mother chose her husband. I chose silence because I was a guest in their house, and I learned in my own marriage what speaking too loudly costs a woman. But I chose silence with a purpose. The notebook is not for revenge. It is for the day they stand in a room and call you a liar and a thief one more time. On that day, place the notebook on the table. Place the receipts. Do not raise your voice. The papers will speak. The money in the box is yours. So is the account at First Citizens. Together they should add up to what they took from you, not in dollars, in years. I love you, sweetheart. I always saw you. Grandma. At the bottom of the letter, in different ink, she had written a postscript. Open the velvet pouch. The pouch was at the bottom of the box. Red velvet, hand-stitched, the size of a paperback book. Inside was an iPad mini, older model. PIN code already disabled. A yellow sticky note on the screen. Press play. I plugged it in. The battery icon read 6%. I sat down at the kitchen table. I put on my headphones. Not Beats. I had never bought a pair of Beats in my life, and I never would. I pressed play. The screen brightened. My grandmother sat in the sewing room in her navy cardigan. She was looking directly at the camera. She said, "Lucy, sweetheart, if you are watching this, it means they are trying to take it from you again. Don't let them." That was the first time in 11 years that an adult in my family had looked directly at me and said, "I believe you." I had not cried in the kitchen at 13. I had not cried at the funeral. I cried for the first time at 9:42 on a Tuesday night in an empty apartment because the dead had come back long enough to call me by my real name. The video was almost 6 minutes long. I watched it in 3 sittings, even though I did not pause it. I watched all 6 minutes the first time. Then I rewound to the beginning and watched again. Then a third time. My grandmother had filmed it on the 18th of September, 2024. She would have been 85. I would have been 22. I had had tea with her in the sewing room the Sunday before, and we had read together for an hour, and she had not mentioned the video she had filmed 3 days earlier. In the first part, she explained why she had started the notebook. She had seen Spencer slide the credit card out of my father's wallet on a Sunday afternoon in early June. She had been on the second-floor landing, looking down through the railing. He had not seen her. She watched the look on my face the day I walked into the kitchen and was told what I had done. She said, "I have seen that look before, sweetheart. It is the look of a girl about to be told she is something she is not. I saw it in my own mother's house in 1948. My father called my sister Mary a thief for a sleeve of butter cookies. My sister believed him about herself for the rest of her life. She died at 57, and she never quite trusted her own memory of any room she had been in. I did not save Mary. I would save you." She paused on the recording. "I started writing things down," she said, "because nobody in that kitchen was going to." The cardigan she was wearing in the video was navy. I recognized it. She had worn it at Christmas in 2024, 3 months after the recording. I had sat next to her on the couch that night for an hour while she ate marzipan. She had not said a word about the camera or what she had set in motion. In the second part of the video, she predicted the dinner. She said, "After I am gone, your brother will arrange a meal. He will call it closure. He will try to take what I left you. He will use the word thief one more time. He has been using it for 11 years. He has gotten lazy with it. He will think this is the night you finally agree." She lifted her chin slightly. "I am not asking you to destroy your brother. I am asking you to refuse, in public, to wear a name he gave you in private. Place the notebook on the table. Place the receipts. Read the letter aloud if Coraline is brave enough. She will be. Eventually." Behind her in the recording, the window flashed once with the headlight of a car turning into the garage. My father's pickup, probably. She had filmed the video while the rest of the house was awake and on the property. Nobody could claim later that she had been alone, frightened, or out of her mind. She had been in the family's own kitchen wing, in the family's own light, with the family's own engines turning over outside. She had thought of everything. In the third part of the video, she told me about my mother. She said, "There is something I need to tell you about your mother. This is the hardest part." She rested her hands in her lap. "On the 14th of June, 2018, your mother came up to my sewing room at 11:30 at night. She sat down on the small couch by the window. She looked very tired. She asked me a question. She said, 'Mom, did Spencer take that card?' The recording held still for 2 seconds. I told her the truth, my grandmother said. I said, 'Yes, Maureen. He did. And you broke your daughter for him.' The recording held for another 2 seconds. Your mother sat very quietly for about 20 minutes. Then she stood up. She said, 'Don't tell Greg I asked.' And she left my sewing room. She did not come back. She did not bring it up at breakfast. She did not bring it up that month, or that year, or any year after." My grandmother looked into the camera. "Your mother knew, Lucy. She knew for 8 years. I am telling you this not to harden your heart. I am telling you so that you do not waste another year hoping she will say it to your face. She won't. Some women cannot unchoose what they chose at 49. I sat on the floor of my apartment kitchen. I did not cry the second time. The first crying had been a release. The second knowledge was a setting. Something inside me cooled down to room temperature and stayed there. The video ended with my grandmother placing her hand on her chest. "Sweetheart," she said, "do this. Then close the door. You don't owe them another decade, not even another Sunday." The screen went dark. I sat on the floor for 15 minutes. Then I stood up. I picked up the notebook. I sat down at the dining table and I started numbering the receipts. Not because I needed to organize evidence, I needed to give my grandmother the order she had lived by. By midnight, I had everything sorted in a single craft folder, 12 receipts, 3 statements, 9 pages of custodial account history, the letter, the iPad. I texted my brother back. 8 words. "I'll be there Sunday, May the 3rd. Pause this for 1 second. Tell me, in the comments below, what you think Lucy does next at that dinner. Does she play the video first? Does she let Spencer hang himself first? Drop your guess. I'll be reading." The next part is the part that took me 11 years to write. When I turned off the kitchen lights that night, I was no longer the girl who had waited 11 years for her mother to ask. I was the woman who had finished reading the book her grandmother had written so that she would not have to wait any longer. There were 9 weeks and 5 days between the will reading and the closure dinner. I did not say much during those weeks. I went to work. I read trust amendments. I built models for an aging client who had recently been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's and wanted to revise the structure of his children's inheritance before he stopped being able to. He was kind. We did the work. My brother texted twice. The first message read, "Looking forward to closing this out." The second read, "Make sure to bring an open mind." I did not reply to the second. My mother called once. I let it go to voicemail. The message lasted 12 seconds. She said my name and then said, "Call me back when you can." I deleted it. My Aunt Coraline called. "Lucy," she said, "your brother had me change the agenda." "What agenda?" "He says he wants me to read a family agreement at the table. He says if I do not, he'll contest the will. He says he'll drag it out for months." I don't know what to do, sweetheart. I closed my eyes for a moment. "Aunt Coraline," I said, "you don't have to do anything on Sunday, just be at the table. Watch." She sent me a screenshot of the agreement Spencer had drafted. It was a single page. It asked me to acknowledge past family difficulties and to assign $40,000 from my grandmother's bequest to my parents for shared family responsibility going forward. The signature line at the bottom had my name printed under it in his handwriting. I read the page once. Then I smiled, for the first time in 9 weeks. He did not know what was in the box. He did not know I had read it. He did not know what had been in the video. He did not know what I had been doing on the 11th of every month for the last 9.5 weeks either, which had been driving up to my grandmother's grave at the cemetery behind St. Lawrence and sitting on the small stone bench across from her headstone. The Sunday before the dinner, the 26th of April, I drove up to the cemetery. The headstone was new, gray granite, neat lettering. I sat on the stone bench across from it. I did not say very much out loud. I had said the bigger things in my own kitchen. I put a small piece of red ribbon on top of the stone. It was the ribbon she had used to mark page 4 of the photo album. I had taken it out of the album the night I sorted the folder. I said, "Sunday is Sunday, Grandma. Earl Grey at 4. I drove home. On the morning of the dinner, I dressed simply. Black wool trousers, a gray cashmere sweater, low ankle boots, no bag, no jewelry I could not throw on a counter. I did not wear lipstick. The night was not about anything I looked like. Bailey picked me up at 4. We drove east on I-40 toward Black Mountain. The trees were just starting to fill in for the season. The light through the new leaves was the same color as the light through the strip curtains in the kitchen 11 years before. "What if your mother breaks down?" Bailey said. "She broke me in 2015, I said. "I am not stopping in 2026 because she might cry, but I am not cruel either. I am just done." She nodded. The craft folder was inside a Trader Joe's tote bag on the floor between my feet. From the outside, it looked like a sack of muffins. I had put a brown paper bakery bag on top for camouflage. We climbed the 3 switchbacks I had counted my whole childhood. The cabin appeared through the pines exactly as it always had. Warm yellow light in the kitchen window, the porch lamp on, the gravel driveway. Postcard. The cabin was always a postcard. That was the problem with the cabin and with the family that lived in it. From the outside, they looked like the people you would want to be related to. I noticed Spencer's car in the driveway. A new BMW X5, white, North Carolina plates that ended in clean low digits, which meant a recent registration. I knew the model. I knew the lease payments. Bryn was a marketing manager at a small agency, and Spencer's commissions as a residential real estate agent in Asheville averaged comfortable, but not extravagant. The X5 was a stretch. The X5 had been a stretch on a household income of about $150,000 a year before children. With a baby coming in November, it would be a constriction. He was still doing it. The same pattern. Buying lifestyle past his income. Hiding it from his wife. "Ready?" Bailey said. "I was 13 the last time I wasn't ready," I said. We got out. We walked up the 3 wood steps. My mother stood on the porch in her cardigan, holding a folded dish towel. She did not wave. She looked at me with the practiced expression of a woman who had spent 2 months rehearsing. "Lucy," she said, "you came." It was the second sentence she had said to me in 2 months. The first had been the same construction. I wondered if she had been surprised, or only surprised that I still came. The dinner began at 5:30. My mother served butternut squash soup from a green ceramic tureen. Wesley Carlyle, my father's old business partner, sat to his right and made light conversation about the spring planting season at his garden. Bryn sat across from me with one hand resting protectively on the front of her sweater. She was 12 weeks along, the bump just visible. She tried twice to steer the conversation toward the baby's room. My Aunt Coraline sat at the foot of the table and ate 2 small bites of bread. Bailey sat next to me and politely answered the one question my mother asked her about her job in PR. Spencer sat at the head of the table. That was the chair my grandmother used to sit in. Nobody had cleared the place setting opposite him. There was an empty water glass at her old seat, a folded napkin she had embroidered herself with a small E in the corner. Nobody had ever cleared it after she died. Nobody would acknowledge that they had not cleared it. The whole evening had been built around pretending the chair was not there. About halfway through the soup, Spencer raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said. He cleared his throat the way men in our family always did before making a toast. 3 quick coughs into a fist. "To Grandma," he said. "To family. To closing chapters." He gave my mother a little wink. He turned and looked at me. "And to my little sister, who came tonight. We appreciate it. Truly." He smiled. He was looking at the corner of my eye, not at my eye. He had been doing that since he was 12. "Don't leave your wallet near her, everyone," he said. "We all know what Lucy does when nobody's looking. Some people are just born thieves." The room moved exactly as I had expected it to. My mother laughed. My father nodded. My aunt looked away. Wesley took half a second longer to laugh, the way an outsider always does when a family makes a joke at the expense of one of its own. He laughed politely because the rest of the table had set the tone. Bryn laughed for half a syllable. Then she stopped. I watched her hand pause on the front of her sweater. Bailey did not laugh. She placed her left hand very lightly on the side of my knee under the table. I set my soup spoon down. I reached for the tote bag. I unzipped the inside pocket. I removed the craft folder. I set the folder on the placemat. I opened it. The first receipt was on top. I lifted it out. Thermal paper, edges curled with 11 years of storage, and I set it in the middle of the table, between the basket of bread and the salt cellar. "Funny you brought that up tonight, Spencer," I said, "because this one has your signature." My voice did not shake. It did not need to. The receipt was on the table. He glanced at it. He did not touch it. His expression flickered for less than a second. "What is this, Lucy?" he said. He was still smiling. The smile was not in his eyes anymore. "It's a receipt," I said. "From where?" "From Liberty Bicycles on Amboy Road," I said. "June 12th, 2015, Trek FX3 Hybrid, $599. Customer signature, Spencer Swift." He laughed. It came out a fraction too late. "Lucy, sweetheart, you carry around an 11-year-old receipt? That's a little sad. Where did you even get this?" I had expected that question. I did not answer it. I lifted the second receipt out of the folder. Best Buy. May 28th, 2015. $329. Beat Solo 2 wireless headphones, white. I set it on the table next to the first. "And this one," I said. "Same week as the photo in the album where you're wearing them at the July 4th cookout. Page 4. He laughed again, sharper. "These could be planted," he said. "You work in estate work. You have access to all kinds of paperwork." I almost smiled. He had said access. That was the wrong word for a man who needed to deny everything. He had implied that access existed. My mother said, "Lucy, where is this coming from?" I did not look at her yet. My Aunt Coraline pushed her chair back. She walked around the table to the bookshelf in the dining room. She lifted down the family photo album, the one bound in green linen with my grandmother's initials embossed at the bottom corner. She opened it on the table. She turned to page 4. She set the album down next to the 2 receipts. The photo was of Spencer on the porch swing on the 4th of July, 2015. Red t-shirt, white Beat Solo 2 wireless around his neck. The same model on the receipt. Wesley Carlyle looked at the album. Then he looked at the receipts. Then he looked at Spencer. He said nothing. I lifted the next document out of the folder. The 3 credit card statements. April, May, June 2015. Highlighted in yellow. Annotated in blue ink. "These are Dad's credit card statements," I said. "Grandma photocopied them at the time. She highlighted the lines. She annotated the margins. In her handwriting." I pushed the statements across the table. One page slid further than the others and stopped in front of Wesley. He picked it up. He held it for a few seconds without speaking. He set it down. "Greg," he said, very quietly. "Is this Eileen's writing?" My father took a long breath. He had not looked at me once since I unzipped the bag. He looked down at the statement now. He pressed the corner of it with his thumb. "Yes," he said. It was the first true word he had said at that table in 11 years. Spencer turned toward him fast. "Dad, tell her this is nothing." My father did not turn. His hand was trembling on his water glass. I watched my mother stand up. She did not say anything. She placed her napkin folded once on her chair, the way she always did when she stood up between courses, and she walked out of the dining room into the kitchen. The 4 of us, my father, Spencer, my Aunt Coraline, and me, sat in silence for a moment. Bailey did not move. Bryn looked from one face to another. Wesley stared at the photograph in the album. I rested my hand on the folder. It was still thick. "There are 9 more receipts," I said. "There is a notebook Grandma kept for 11 years. There is a letter she wrote me in 2023. I looked at the empty chair where my grandmother used to sit. And there is something Grandma recorded for all of you, on video." Spencer pressed both hands flat on the table. "Lucy, stop." "I am not the one who started this, Spencer," I said. "You did. Tonight. Again. I am finishing it." My mother came back from the kitchen. Her eyes were red. She sat down. My Aunt Coraline pulled out her chair for her, gently, with a hand on the seat back. They did not speak. Spencer opened his mouth. My father put his hand on Spencer's forearm. It was the first time in 11 years my father had stopped my brother at the dinner table. He said, "Spencer, let her finish." I looked at my father. He did not look back, but he did not lift his hand off Spencer's arm. I lifted the notebook out of the folder. It was the black leather notebook with the worn spine. I set it in the middle of the table between the bread basket and the receipts. I opened it to the first page. I turned the notebook to face my mother. I tapped the first entry. "Grandma started this 3 days after you took my room, Mom," I said. "She knew. She tried to tell you that afternoon, and she tried again in 2018. My mother did not look at the page yet. She was looking at her water glass. I turned the pages. I knew where I was going. I had marked the page with a thin strip of green sticky tab the previous Tuesday. I flipped to the entry I needed. I turned the notebook again. This one's June 14th, 2018. "Do you remember coming to her sewing room that night?" My mother put her hand on the page. She read the entry slowly. The entry read, "Maureen came to me tonight. She asked me directly. I told her the truth. She walked out. She asked me not to tell Greg." My mother's hand stayed on the page. She did not deny it. "Don't, Lucy. she said. Her voice broke on the second word. Please don't. Mom, I said. You said in this kitchen 11 years ago that I was a liar and a thief. That's all I'd ever be to this family. You said it again in front of Wes in 2018. You knew when you said it the second time. She closed her eyes. Spencer leaned forward and reached for my mother's hand. Mom, look at me. Don't believe this. She did not turn toward him. I waited. When my Aunt Coraline stood up, she did not look at anyone. She walked to my side of the table. She reached out toward the craft folder. May I read it? She said. The letter. I slid the letter out of the folder. I handed it to her. She walked back to her seat. She unfolded the 2 pages. She put on her reading glasses. She read the letter out loud in a level voice, slowly, the way she had once read passages of the Old Testament aloud at our grandfather's funeral. She read it without skipping or paraphrasing. When she reached the line, place the notebook on the table. Do not raise your voice. The papers will speak. She stopped. She set the letter face down on the table. She turned toward my father. Greg, she said. Eileen sent me a copy of this letter in October. I have it in my study. I should have spoken in February at the will reading. I am sorry, Lucy. I am so sorry. My father bent his head down toward the placemat. She kept going. Greg, your mother said something to me at Thanksgiving that I did not understand. She said, Coraline, I gave my granddaughter receipts because nobody would give her ears. My Aunt Coraline took off her reading glasses. I understand now, she said. My father's shoulders began to shake. He did not make any sound. His hand stayed flat on the table. Spencer pushed his chair back so hard the legs scraped. I'm done with this, he said. This is an ambush. He stood up. Bryn did not stand up with him. She put both hands on her sweater, near the bump, and she did stand up. But she did not stand up.